This is a summary of Lai M. and Mulayam S.'s 2014 article in the journal Police Practice and Research, titled Interpreter Linguistic Intervention in the Strategies Employed by Police in Investigative Interviews. Bilingual interpreters alter the outcomes of police investigative interviews through their word choice in the target language, as this study finds. Police design verbal strategies before interviews which aim to obtain complete information from suspects, whose results, however, are then less effective because of the translation, that is, from the police's language into the suspect's dominant language. Lai and Mulayam state that this extra factor during the interview is under-researched and is important to examine given the outcomes of these interviews go beyond the interview setting and into the legal and criminal justice system and to society. Lai and Mulayam's study first outlines the process of the police investigative interview and then finds evidence through linguistic analysis of live translations of an audio recording between an officer and a shoplifter that finds there is pressure to interpret in real time and that this is what may be at the root of the problem. First, Lai and Mulayam's study defines this pressure and the interpreter roles and ultimately argues that stronger collaboration between the police and the interpreting profession is necessary in what they call an increasingly linguistically diverse world, albeit in Melbourne, Australia, where this study and its data originate. The police investigative interview within criminal justice is defined as commonplace and important, which Lai and Mulayam support with several citations. Therefore, it's reasonable to think that the interpreter's role is just as integral and also affects society. The interpreter is viewed in many ways by the police profession, some pleasing, some devaluating. However, the competency of the interpreter is judged on how well they both understand the context and instantly translate the message into the suspect's language. It is important to mention here that the interpreter is, in a sense, enlisted to take part in any coercive behaviour a police officer may use in a private interview, which may not be permissible in a courtroom. This, reasonably, is more added pressure. The interpreter may wish to view themselves as invisible during the interview process, that is, practically not present. However, there are growing perceptions of the role as visible, as Lai and Mulayam support through citation. Traditionally, this is unwanted by police. Moreover, when interpreters interrupt a courtroom to ask a speaker to clarify something, that also is looked down upon. What's more is that interpreters do not even have access in Australia to case briefs, which may otherwise help them to prepare. They may at times be the least informed person in a courtroom. The authors define the misunderstanding of the term interpreting, that at some point in time, interpreters have been told to translate verbatim, so as to keep them out of the effect of the judicial function in the courtroom. Don't interpret, just translate, a phenomenon which suggests something about the poor understanding of the collocations and idiomatic expressions of language by people generally. Appropriately, the study offers conceptual units as a way interpreters should preserve the speech, not word by word, but concept by concept, to remain closer to the literal and not a free meaning at the free interpretation end of the scale. However, this is much more difficult in the private police interview if you consider the interviewer intentionally uses abstract and idiomatic speech, or even ums and ahs and hesitations, which renders it more difficult given this pressure to interpret literally and instantly. This is more evidence that closer work between police and interpreters is needed. Lai and Mulayam stress the need for the bilingual interview to be as close as possible to the monolingual, that is, to reduce the effects of the triangular flow of communication especially in the police interview, where the product of the interview, the transcript, may be used in a court of law. With respect to its method, Lai and Milliam's study uses an audio recording of a policeman and a girl suspected of stealing an expensive gold ring from a jewelry store to hypothesize that out of 11 professional interpreters of diverse backgrounds who are not aware of specific police verbal strategies and who are under settings that simulate live translation of the tape, that they will more often use freer translation than translation at the literal end, i.e., that's to say, not conveying the style, hesitations, register, or idiomatic expressions of the policeman closely, and ergo the intended strategy. An example is the use of how come with children rather than why, which is more accusatory. The findings of the study reveal this hypothesis to be true. One example being that 55% of the interpretations of how come ended up being interpreted as the accusatory why. The authors admit the study empirically is small scale and that the findings are not conclusive or statistically significant. They suggest the interpreter should strive to communicate the linguistic intent of police whilst being mindful of literal and freer translation scales. They recommend police learn more about these linguistic issues themselves and include the findings into their interview prior to forming strategies.